For the 7th consecutive night, the heralds of dawn found me still awake. A dog howled somewhere across the hills in reply to another dog. In my mother's hut, I could hear Jiseru, the he-goat, chasing Niru, the she-goat. So sexy was Jiseru that when there was no she-goat to mate with, he would chase his own brothers or make love to trees. He even raped his own kids. In this place, rats didn't use family planning. They knew how to welcome a visitor, especially if he was fresh from town, where his heels had grown soft from wearing shoes every day. One rat couldn't understand why I was so mean with my heels. It kept on sniffing at my heels whenever I showed signs of sleep, but unfortunately, sleep was no more a part of my life. I was like a watchdog. It was now a week since I had left Kahuthu's place and settled on the half-hectare of land which was the only property for my parents, my 3 brothers, and me. All my brothers were married, with at least 3 kids each. 2 were laborers in a nearby sawmill, while the 3rd one earned his living by tilling the exhausted plot. My mother tilled the land, while my aging father spent his days swallowing the native Muratina. I hardly saw him, except when somebody called in to report that the old man had been located lying in a ditch some distance away. Then I, or one of my brothers, would go to collect him and stagger home with him. Old people must be accorded all due respect by their children, even when they shit on themselves at beer parties. My dreams were haunted by Caroline. I kept on wondering what she was doing and how she was feeling about me. Was she missing me as much as I was missing her? Had she told her father about the pregnancy? What was going to happen when her father found out? Many unpleasant things can happen when a hobo like me impregnates the daughter of a black duke like Kahuthu. But since nothing had happened so far, I shifted my mind to the immediate problem: what to do for a living. With my limited education, the only income I could expect to earn in the future was through manual work. I had already made up my mind to start something really worth doing. After a careful survey of various petty prospects, I made up my mind to be a carpenter. The idea was given to me by an old friend called Zakayo. Zakayo owned a small workshop near the local dispensary. This was the vantage point for his business, because coffins are needed by the dispensary. You may think that this is a useless business, Zakayo had told me as he proudly polished a coffin, but when you start doing it, you never want to stop it. These are not the old days, when dead bodies were unceremoniously planted into the soil with only blanket. Nowadays, people have developed a sense of respect for the dead. And what last respect can a dead man expect from his people than a wooden suit, a coffin? You talk as if you are amused by dead bodies, I had said. Of course, he had retorted. If people didn't die, I'd run the business at a loss and probably close it. Long live death. Zakayo had offered me a partnership in the business on condition that I didn't mind straining my soft muscles. I was to pay him some money as capital and later work on a 50-50 basis. As I still had my 6 months' pay almost intact, I decided to give Zakayo a half of it. For the next 2 weeks, I spent my days in the workshop with Zakayo teaching me a few tricks about the tedious job. My muscles started hardening. My veins protruded like potatoes pushing up to the surface of the soil, and blisters covered my palms like a leper's. Carpenters are cursed. They'll never get away with anything, not after they made the cross on which Jesus was crucified. To my disappointment, the business wasn't as booming as Zakayo had led me to believe. The demand for coffins wasn't promising. People in this area didn't die in large numbers. And contrary to Zakayo's allegations, some people had their dead relatives buried without coffins, just like planting potatoes. A man whose father had died asked me when I talked to him about burying the deceased with honors. What is the use of a coffin if white ants can consume it and reach the body? However, The business earned us enough income to cater for our daily financial commitments and a little savings. I adjusted myself to the prevailing circumstances, trying to save as much as I could. But my efforts were interrupted when one evening Caroline suddenly appeared. I was chatting with my mother outside her hut when she looked up the path leading into our home. "A stranger is coming here," she announced. I followed her look and made out the unmistakable figure of Caroline. My heart jerked with apprehension. It is difficult to explain how I felt as I speechlessly watched her walk towards us. Even today, when I see a schoolgirl wearing a gray skirt, my stomach contracts with a cold spasm. Till now, I hadn't mentioned Caroline to my mother, nor why I had resigned. She was taken aback to see my expression. "Do you know her?" she asked, her eyes searching my face. "Yes," I said in a hoarse voice. Before she could seek further explanation, Caroline reached us. I couldn't hold back the urge to meet her. "How did you come here?" I asked, locking my hand in hers. "I asked the way," she said. "Your funny name made it easier for me because there are not many people with such a name in this region." I looked at my mother shyly. "This is Caroline, the daughter of my former boss, Kahuthu." My mother smiled at her amiably. Then came the critical point in the last meeting. Caroline couldn't offer the traditional greetings. She looked at me for help. In return, I looked at my mother to warn her that this was not a typical girl. She was brought up in an atmosphere where traditional greetings were legends. She understood my message and gave Caroline a pathetic smile. "Welcome," my mother said, and started to busy herself preparing something for the guest. I led Caroline to my mother's hut, because it wasn't in keeping with our culture for a man to receive a lady in his room when the parents are watching. The fact that there was no separate table room explained why I had to take her to my mother's house. We sat on stools near the hearth. A glowing ember between the 3 cooking stones was sending up a call of smoke all over the room. I didn't dare look at Caroline in the face. I was ashamed of my own poverty. To Caroline, a hut like this one was supposed to be somewhere in the museum. As I cast a glance at her, I caught her scrutinizing the room the way a scientist would scrutinize a dwelling once occupied by Stone Age men. "How is Nairobi?" I asked to keep her busy. She had a problem in answering me. Her throat was half choked by the smoke coming from the embers, and her eyes were wet with tears. This smoke can really hurt the eyes, especially if the victim is inside a small hut with no ventilation. "Nairobi was all right this morning," she said. "How is your family?" "All right." A short silence followed. The only noticeable sound was that of my mother's axe as she split wood outside. She was definitely wondering why this expensive-looking girl had decided to visit us at such an odd hour and in such a peculiar way. I was equally worried. "What made you come at this time of the evening?" I asked. "Problems." They now know. I had expected that. I wanted details. "This morning," she said, "we were taken for the occasional medical examination." The doctor immediately knew that I was pregnant. He didn't tell me, but I saw him make a note of it. To make it worse, he knows my father. He told me to remind him of my father's telephone number, giving an excuse that it was a long time since they had met, and he wanted to have a chat with him. Obviously, he wanted to contact my father and tell him what he'd discovered. "Did you give him the number?" I asked. My voice was rattling. What was the point of hiding it? Even if I didn't tell him, there was a directory nearby. After all, it is very easy for anybody to contact my father. Then, I sighed. I didn't know what to do. I knew that by the time I reached home, my father would be yearning to get his hands on me. How could I face him? So, I decided to run away before the news reached him. Immediately after leaving the doctor, I stealthily made for the city center where I caught a bus to this place. I didn't know it was that far. I brooded for a long moment. Was I dreaming? No, this was real. "What do you intend to do now?" I asked stupidly. "Go with you to my father. You are a man. You can explain to him what happened and what you want to do." For a brief moment, I had a vision of Kahuthu, a thick man with a stiff neck like that of a rhino, big eyes which only looked at expensive things, and which despised all cheap things. I saw him looking at me as if I was a worm wriggling in his meal and saying, "Why come to me?" What a joke. If Caroline expected me to face her father, there was something wrong with her mind. "You know you are asking the impossible," I said apologetically. "The best I can expect from your father is a broken rib. I am sorry, but I can't face him in any kind of dialogue. Maybe in a courtroom." "If that is the case," she said, "I'll stay with you." "But Caroline," I protested, "you can't possibly live here. In the first place, you won't be able to tolerate the conditions of this place. We are poor people with no signs of improvement in the foreseeable future. You just can't live here. On the other hand, your father can cause trouble for me. I'd be charged with abducting you." She started sobbing. I feared that my mother could come and find her in that state, but as she came staggering in with a bundle of wood, Caroline composed herself. My mother joined us and started feeding the fire with wood. She didn't seem anxious to know what all this was about, although the expression on her face indicated that she smelt trouble. She avoided looking at Caroline because of the latter's outrageously short skirt. Sitting on a stool, her thighs were exposed up to her pants. This was all right with the new generation, which didn't regard the thighs as private parts, but to a woman of my mother's age, everything above the knee was a private part. "Why don't you tell your mother what is going on?" Caroline said in English. My mother knew no English. "You think it is necessary?" "You are keeping her in suspense." She was right. My mother was beginning to show signs of impatience and disappointment. As any other mother would, she was entitled to know what was going on between her son and this lovely and sophisticated girl. I struggled to find words which would fit into this kind of conversation. It is hard to talk to parents, especially when you are explaining the improbable. It becomes hell when your parents laugh at you. That was what I feared, my mother laughing at me. "You are in trouble?" That was my mother. Oh, lovely mother. Just as I was struggling for words, she came to my aid. "Sort of trouble," I said, feeling relieved. "You came here because you impregnated your master's daughter?" I laughed. "So did Caroline." "Yes. And now she has come to look for you?" "Yes. Does her father know that she is here?" "Number. Are you intending to marry her?" "Oh, mother, how?" As I didn't reply, Caroline looked hard at me. My mother went on, stirring the porridge. "Yes." Oh God, what am I saying? My mother smiled and said nothing for a while. Caroline was looking outside. I couldn't tell what effects the three-letter word had on her. "Then you'll have to talk to her father," Mother went on. "Otherwise, it'll look as if you've stolen his daughter." I wished she could understand what that meant. She was deliberately fooling me. She was just trying to make a man out of me when she very well knew the incredibility of such a situation. On my part, I didn't want to show her that I was incapable of negotiating for a wife, no matter what kind of father the wife to be had. Briefly, that was the end of the talk with my mother. As I didn't say yes or no, she let the matter end there. But right inside, she knew that a yes or no had one ultimate goal: trouble. That evening, the whole family gathered in my hut. They were all anxious to see this popular dignitary's daughter who wanted to marry the downtrodden son of a Muratina toper. My brothers came with packets of sugar. Their wives brought food, specially prepared for this great, great day when Chuma was to be regarded as a man. Even my father canceled his usual trip to the beer party. Man. It is wonderful to be applauded by well-wishers when they think you are getting married. But it is equally disheartening if the girl you love is the daughter of a black duke who is not aware of such arrangements. You should have seen the faces of those who were wishing me well. They tried to hide it with their forced smiles, but worry was firmly printed on their faces. My mother couldn't help staring at me with scornful eyes. She even tended to sit near me as if to protect me from an invisible grabber. Later, the party came to an end, and everybody returned to their quarters, leaving Caroline and me to ourselves. Despite the vast difference between her father's bungalow and my slum, she looked enthralled and not very much out of place. Among my family members, she had looked like a white missionary teaching native pagans how to say Hail Mary. But now, as we chatted in low voices, she looked completely relaxed. Could she change? I wondered. I wished she could. I tried to liken her case to similar cases. Oh yes, she could if she wanted. Take for instance the case of that president who was deposed. He now lives in hiding. No motorcades to escort him, no soldiers to salute him, no jubilant crowds to cheer him, no glories, nothing but hiding. And that Sultan of Zanzibar, who had to run for his life when he was dethroned, now I hear he lives in a backyard somewhere in Europe. No more servants and women to attend him, no more living in the splendid palace. Could Caroline adjust herself as those people had? Could she accept what fate had given her and forget what fate had robbed her of? Maybe she would, I comforted myself, but that would not be the end of the problems. There was her father to think of. Now that my parents were aware of my intention to take Caroline for a wife, I had the privilege of stepping under the same roof with her. Experience first, negotiations later. But it made me feel very awkward to think that my mother and everybody was aware of what I was doing with her inside the hut. I even imagined my mother listening carefully to all that was going on. The night was lovely because this time we had no fear of an intruder like Kahuthu spoiling our lovemaking, but I had the problem of guarding Caroline from rats. She would suddenly wake up when they yowled and cling to me for protection. Then the grass-mattressed bed was not that comforting. The bed bugs, reinforced by lice, were a real menace. For reasons best known to her, she ignored the inconvenience of her new environment. "Have you made up your mind?" she asked, after we had gone to bed. "Yes," I grunted. "I will talk to your parents."